Hi there, and thanks for joining me. Today we're going to complete this month's training on Steel Project Management, finishing with payment applications. Now, how you prepare, present, and support your application for payment can have a big impact on the timely approval and issuance of your request. So today we're going to go over everything that you need to know to make sure that it gets processed and approved the first time and get that money coming your way. So stay tuned. Payment applications on construction projects are requests for progress payments for materials purchased and services rendered on the job. And to have your application approved, you need to be able to quantify these and substantiate the relative value of them so that the person who's reviewing your application can verify that you're not overcharging for your actual progress on the job. And the burden of proof falls on the applicant, which is you. Payment of your request can be subject to the approval of any combination of the general contractor, construction manager, architect, and/or owner's representative. And leaving them any room for doubt will surely delay your payment. So putting your best effort into preparing your supporting documentation is what's going to get you paid and faster. So in our instruction of how to make that happen for you, today we're going to review the many forms that can make up your payment application, and we're going to discuss the purpose for each one. Then we'll review how to fill out these forms in order to complete your payment application. And then we'll close by discussing prompt payment laws and what you need to know about them. Now, even though all pay applications serve the same purpose and they all follow the same general format, they're not in fact all the same. And for that reason, I'm going to give you two different examples of each document we'll review today. The first being from the more common and familiar AIA 700 series contract document for payment applications, and the other one being from the California State University system. And because your pay application is just the summary and culmination of all of the ancillary documents, I'm actually going to begin with those, starting first with the Schedule of Values. Your Schedule of Values is an itemized list of your complete scope of work with the value of each item listed next to it, which will sum up to your total contract amount. Now, this list can, but certainly doesn't have to follow your inclusions list within your proposal or scope of work. But in either event, it should follow in the order of operations, meaning the tasks that are going to be at the beginning of your project should be listed near the top, and those that are going to be near the end or completion of your job should be listed near the bottom. And so as progress ensues on your job, the billing of each one of those tasks are going to follow suit. As you can see from the AIA format, it requires a breakout of the work performed and installed versus that of materials being stored either on or off site for each billing cycle, whereby the CSU Schedule of Values does not require such a breakout. Instead, you could just itemize the difference of the materials under your features of work and the cost for each. However, the CSU does require a separate form submission with the request of payment of all stored materials, and I do want to pause and take a look at that. So as you can see on their form, you need to provide a description of the materials you're asking payment for, the quantity and the value of them, and also the location at which they're being stored. And at the bottom here, you need to sign an agreement of the affidavit in which you relinquish all interest and ownership of those materials to the owner when you receive payment, even if they're stored at your location of business. If they're paying you for it, they become the rightful owners of it, and you cannot use that as leverage against them to secure payments on any current or future billing cycles. And though it may not be exactly this form, if you're billing for stored materials, be prepared to provide one just like this. And if a title transfer is required, you can almost certainly find that as one of the appendices to your contract. And lastly, let's take a look at the actual payment application form. Now, as I mentioned before, the pay application is the summary of the other documents we've filled out and provided. So the AIA pay application is meant to be used with the other AIA forms, and the CSU ones make their own group as well. And you'll see that as we go through this now. So for AIA, here at the top, you provide the total base contract value of your subcontract. And next to that, you add the change amount to your approved change orders. That's not those that are still in dispute, but those that have actually been approved, and you can now bill for it. And the sum of those two brings your new subcontract total to date. Now, at line number 4, and you can see how this will work in conjunction with the AIA schedule of values, they want to know the total completed and stored to date, which is column G on your SOV. So if we look over that, total completed and stored, which is the addition of columns D, E, and F, and you can just do that math to find that number for your current bill cycle. Now under retainage, they separate that you might have a separate retention amount for your work completed of that for stored materials. And so that's one of the reasons why they do break it out on AIA, which will impact your total retention amount for the work that you have completed, which you total right here. Now on line 6, you would take your total completed amount minus the retention being withheld right now, and they give you the lines and where to minus that to come up with that number. You get that total number, which will bring you up to your total work that's been completed to date, minus the retention being withheld to date, minus the previous amounts that you've already submitted, what's called certificates for payment, which is the title of this document. They call this a certificate for payment. So minus all of your previous certificates on this project will get you the total current payment that you're requesting and it's due. And then their final line here is the balance of your contract, including the retention that's remaining. They also have change order summaries as well. But what's interesting to note, and because the AIA document is used so commonly, you should be aware of the fact that they require that it be notarized by a public notary. You need to sign it and include some of your other information, and it needs to be notarized with your submission, which is not always required from contractors that don't utilize the AIA document. Now, alternatively, let's take a look at the CSU payment request form. Now, the structure of this is largely the same as the AIA document, but some of the project variables are predefined because they're requirements of doing work with the CSU, such as retention is held at 5%. That's not going to change. And also, for stored materials, you're only allowed to bill for 90% of the value listed on our stored material payment request form that we filled out. But just like with AIA, you'll have to use the supplementary documents to complete this and submit your request for payment for that month's billing cycle. Welcome back. And next we're going to take a look at how to actually fill out and utilize the forms that we reviewed and discussed prior to the break in preparation for compiling and submitting your pay application. And for this example, I'm going to be utilizing the documents prepared by the California State University system. And I've begun with the schedule of values, which is the very place you should start on every project regardless of what document type it is that you're utilizing. Now you can see that I've built one for a contract of a total base value of $500,000. And in this case, it's going to be my first billing cycle, and I'm going to be billing for $90,000 of that amount. I have broken this down into 5 individual tasks with their values, and those are detailing, materials, fabrication, shipping, and ending with erection. Now in this example, I have 100% of my detailing done, so I'm billing for the full value of that. I have 30% of the materials have been purchased and incorporated into the work, which is an important distinction I'm going to come back to in a minute. And approximately 20% of the fabrication labor has been accomplished. Now, the $15,000 or 30% of my total material cost for the job has been fabricated and incorporated into the work. And it's important that you keep that in mind because these are not the only materials that I have purchased and that I'm storing in the example I've prepared for today. But of the work that has actually been done, it comes to a total of $90,000 of the $500,000 base contract that I have prepared. Now, for the other materials that I have purchased but have not fallen into the incorporated scope of work just yet, I have prepared a request for payment for materials stored. Now, this same form, like the other, comes out to $15,000 worth of material. But the distinction between these materials is this is raw mill materials that are sitting in my yard that have not been cut or coped or welded or in any way incorporated into a fabricated product. So I am requesting for reimbursement of stored materials that are going to be owned by the owner. I provided the description of what they are, the quantities of them, the values of them, and I will note that this value is usually supported by invoices provided by either your mill or service center and the location of where they're being stored. This materials and their adequacy and existence has been verified by an inspector and has been signed by the contractor. Now, it's important to keep this in mind. And remember, these materials are not a part of any fabricated product, but the 20% of fabrication that has been done utilize 30% of the materials that I have been purchased. So let's go to our actual pay application and start filling in these categories. So starting at the top, our contract total value is $500,000. And in our example today, I'm going to exclude any reference to change orders that might be into dispute or approved or anything of that nature. So we'll say that I just don't have any. And earned to date goes back to the schedule of values. This billing cycle is for $90,000 worth of work earned to date. So I'm going to enter $90,000. And again, I don't have any change orders to speak of. Now, because 5% retention is what is stipulated for work with the CSU system, it's already calculating the retention that's taken out, meaning that my net due earned is going to be $85,500. But here in section 2F, I can apply for advance payment of allowed material stored on site. And it states here in the subnote that I can bill for 90% of the value that's listed in my form 70217, which is the request for payment of materials on hand, which is exactly what we have done here. So I can bill for 90% of the total value of just stored raw materials that I'm requesting. So in here, I'm going to bill for 90% of the $15,000, which means I'm allowed a reimbursement of $13,500. So my total pay application amount comes to $99,000. Now, you might be wondering how it is you're supposed to bill for materials once they're incorporated into the work after they've already been billed as stored materials. Wouldn't you be double billing for the same material? And the answer is no. And to give an example of that, let's jump ahead and pretend that we're now in the next pay cycle. And by some impossible fluke, we haven't accomplished anything else other than incorporating the previously stored materials into the work. So in that case, our contract value hasn't changed. We don't have any change orders, but our earned to date would go up by that $15,000 of previously stored material. So our $90,000 would go up to $105. Still don't have any change orders, but our total earned to date, being the $105, only has a retention rate of 5% that's applied to it. In this case, we don't have any stored materials that we're billing for, even though we did in the prior month. So this is going to change to 0. So our total payments due becomes $99,750. However, in the month before, in the pay application that we just went through, we billed for $99,000. So our only amount due now is the 5% differential of the retention rate for materials incorporated into the work versus those that are merely held. So my increase would only be $750, even though I have now incorporated $15,000 worth of material. Regardless of any amount of work that I did in addition to this, after I apply that amount of material to my schedule of values and then here onto my payment certificate or pay application, because I have to also reduce the amount of payments already processed or made, it's only going to offset the fact that I've already billed for that material and now I get the extra 5% of retention that would have been due otherwise for that. So now that we've looked at how to prepare and how to submit your pay application and how to support it with all the documentation to make sure that it gets approved, let's take a look and have a discussion about prompt payment laws and what you need to know.
And lastly, I want to talk about prompt payment laws. Now, the laws that I'm referring to are the ones that outline the rights, processes, and timelines for contractors to receive payments. Now, these laws and their impacts can vary significantly from one state to another. And additionally, the provisions of the Prompt Payment Act only apply on federal projects. So you'll need to research what your rights are based off of with whom and where you're doing work. But I do have two comments I want to make to you regarding prompt payment. And the first one is that your time frame to receive payment gets delayed and then starts back over if any part of your pay application is in dispute. Going back to a comment I made earlier today, if your pay application is lacking information or if it's ambiguous, it will certainly delay you getting the money that you need. And lastly, virtually all of your rights and protections under these laws can be waived or completely ignored if you sign an unfavorable contract. It's perfectly legal for you to enter into an agreement with an employee and contractor that has different terms and conditions of payment. So you need to know what those are and take a close look before you sign anything. I want to make sure that you're protected. Thanks for tuning in today. If you enjoyed this video, then be sure to give it a thumbs up, and then check out our website where you can subscribe to receive videos like this every single week, bringing you only the best in steel construction education. And while you're there, be sure to check out our list of courses, providing you a deeper and more intensive study on topics just like this one. You see, here at the SBC Group, it's our mission to help you know the most so that you can do your best. And finally, if you should have any questions or concerns about where you're going to spend eternity and you don't have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ, feel free to reach out to me and I'll be glad to help you with that too. Thank you and God bless.